welcome back to another episode on Anxiety Doesn't Own Me podcast. My name is Emmanuel Isaacson, and I'm an anxiety coach who helps people to overcome and heal their anxiety naturally. On today's episode, what I'm going to be talking about is how to control your thoughts the proper way. Because I know from my own personal experience and the people that I deal with and the people that I talk with, that the way we actually deal in trying to control our thoughts isn't the right way. And a lot of us, what we tend to do is that we try to push out the thought, or we tell ourselves, I shouldn't be thinking about these things, or that I want to stop having these thoughts. And what happens with that, it actually increases if we're struggling with anxiety, can increase our anxiety. So let's say if we have an anxious thought and we want that anxious thought out of our system, out of our mind, and we're trying to fight it, we're trying to push it out, or we're trying to stop thinking about it, we're trying to ignore it, what happens is that it increases our anxiety because the thought stays there and it actually amplifies itself. Because what's happening whenever we're trying to fight the thought, or whenever we're trying to stop thinking about, like, I don't want to think about this, I want to stop, what we're doing is that we're focusing on the thought. If you realize, we're putting all our energy and all of our focus on the thought. And whenever we focus on something, that thing amplifies. It's like, have you ever, I remember I used to see this when I was younger, that whenever I used to see a specific car, all of a sudden I would see that car everywhere. I'm like, wow, I never realized that before. I'm like, these cars are everywhere. It's because I focused, I was actually aware of the car being there. And then all of a sudden I see it everywhere because that's what I'm focused on. Or whenever you're whenever you're fearful of something, you're right away focusing on that. So if we're focusing on our panic attacks because we're afraid of it, we're all going to be thinking about it and just focusing on the panic attacks and nothing else. Nothing else. So whenever we're trying to get a thought out of our mind, we're not doing it properly. And in this episode, I'm going to show you guys how to do it properly. And I know it's going to be hard. It's not a simple thing that all of a sudden just do this and it's going to work easily. No, you're going to have setbacks and it's going to be very uncomfortable because the way I'm going to teach you it, it's going to be the opposite of whatever you think it's going to be. And what we need to do with our thoughts is stop fighting our thoughts. Stop not wanting to have those thoughts. Trying to stop not thinking about it. Because if you ever think about this, there's a famous example that whenever someone tells you not to think about something, you are going to be thinking about it. So what we need to do is accept the thought. Say, you know what? Let's say if you're struggling with intrusive thoughts, which a lot of people do, and I know I used to struggle with it. And even to today, I have intrusive thoughts here and there. I think every single person in the world has intrusive thoughts. They pop up, and it depends. With anxiety, we're just more focused on it because we're afraid of it. But what we can do is just say, you know what? I'm just going to accept the thought. I'm not going to fight it. I am just going to let it be. Because again, what we talked about before in the beginning of the episode is that what we said was that whenever we're trying to fight it, or we're trying to stop not having these thoughts, what's happening is that we're focusing on the thought. So whenever you're accepting the thought, what's happening is that you're letting the thought pass by. Your focus is going to eventually get onto something else because you're no longer afraid of the thought. You no longer don't want this thing in your life. So whenever you're taking it with grace, it will just kind of like move away. It will kind of get your focus onto something else. So that way we are not controlling the thought. The way to not control the thought, the way to control the thought is not controlling the thought. That's what it is. So whenever you're trying to control it, you're not really controlling it. It's controlling you. So we want to not control the thought. So whenever we're not controlling it, we're actually in control. So whenever the thoughts pop by, let's say you have an intrusive thought, like me, for example. I'll give you guys an example. Like, I used to want to hurt people whenever I used to talk with them. It was just an intrusive thought. I had this urge, never did it, not even once. Never happened, but it had an urge. That's an intrusive thought. It's a part of the OCD. So whenever I would have that, I would just say, you know what? Yeah, okay, that's great. I have a thought. That's just great. I just have that thought. It's not me. It's not who I am. I just have that thought, and I'm going to accept that I have this thought. I'm not going to accept the fact that, hey, I am just going to be okay with having this. No, we have to improve ourselves. But what we want to do is accept the thought that we're having. Because the thought that we're having, it doesn't mean that we're actually going to do that thing that it's telling us to do, or that we may feel like it's going to happen. It's just a thought. I'm just going to say, you know what? Okay, fine. I'm thinking this way. What happens that after a few minutes, you start focusing on something else. Now, another way that we can control our thoughts is by taking the negative. So let's say we have a negative thought about something and changing it to more of a positive thing. So instead of thinking right away, like for example, whenever I used to be afraid of flying, instead of me thinking right away that the plane's going to crash, I said, you know what? The plane it's going to be an amazing flight. We're going to get to our destination easily and smoothly and safely. I'm going to enjoy the flight. It's going to be smooth sailing the entire time, and everything's going to be safe, and I'm going to land safely. I'm going to get to my destination. So I would change the thought. I would change it. Again, I'm not pushing it out. I am not doing that. It's not going to help. It's going to put more pressure on me. It's going to make me more stressed out. I'm going to be worrying about the thought. Why is it not going away? What's wrong with me? It's going to increase my anxiety. So that's not really helping. So what I'm doing over here is I'm basically saying, you know what? I am going to change the way I think. I have this thought that the plane is going to crash and I'm terrified of it. But you know what? 99.4% of the time, planes get to the destination, and I'm going to be the 99.4% of the time, and I'm going to enjoy it, and I'm going to have a good time on this flight. And you guys, you can look at your own personal experience that you're currently having. Like let's say, for example, you're afraid of panic attacks. Say, you know what? Panic attacks are very uncomfortable, and they're scary, and they suck. They 100% suck, and I agree with you. But what we can tell ourselves, you know what? Panic attacks is just is a normal response to danger. So my body's actually working fine. It's working properly. Now I know that's not a sufficient answer, but we can tell ourselves, you know what? It's kind of like an adrenaline rush. It's nothing, it's not something that's dangerous over there. We want to minimize over here also. We can minimize. So we can tell ourselves, you know what? It's an adrenaline rush. That's what's happening, because that's what's really happening. Your adrenaline is getting pumped into your body. That's what's happening into your body. It's getting pumped into your body, the adrenaline. And what we need to do is, of course, calm down the panic attack. But at the same time, we're afraid of the panic attack, right? We're terrified of it. So we avoid situations. So we right away can tell ourselves, you know what? It's just an adrenaline rush. It's not I'm having a heart attack. It's not that I'm having a tumor. It's not like I'm going to faint or I'm going to pass out or anything like that. Whatever it is, I'm having a panic. I'm having an adrenaline rush. That's what it is. So, and I know, see, like the word association, you see that? A lot of us, when we tell ourselves like, oh, panic attacks, they sound much worse. But when we tell ourselves adrenaline rush, it actually is less intense, and it kind of is like, oh yeah, it is an adrenaline rush. So we can change the way we see the thing, the way we see it. We can change the words. We can tell ourselves like, you know what? I shouldn't be thinking this way. I should not be thinking this way, right? Tell yourself it's okay that you think this way. But what we could do is change a thought more from a negative way to more a positive thing. So guys, what we want to do is, again, we want to acknowledge that we have these thoughts. We don't want to push them out. We don't want to say, I don't want these anymore. I shouldn't have them or anything like that. We want to acknowledge like, hey, you know what? I'm having these negative thoughts. But what we could do is that let me change the thought. Like whenever I used to have intrusive thoughts and I used to be in front of somebody and I used to tell myself like, I want to hurt this person, I want to punch this person. Instead of me telling myself that, yeah, I want to punch this person, instead I would picture myself hugging the person. Or I remember I was speaking to one of my clients and he also had this issue. And I told him, okay, I'm like, what can you do with this intrusive thought? How can you change it so that you can feel much better? And he would picture himself punching the person that's in front of him like I used to have. He's like, you know what? Maybe I can fist bump them. I'm like, yeah, that's great. You see, like you brought in your own positive way and how you can change the thought and how you can see things. So that way you're bringing back power to yourself. You're not letting the negative thought take control, because that's what's happening right now. You are actually, what you're doing is you are bringing in the control and telling yourself, no, I don't want to hurt the person. I don't want this negative thing. What I do want is to hug the person, as I want to fist bump the person. So we're changing the way we see it. That helps us to calm down tremendously, and that helps us to take away the thought. And what happened with me, after a while, I stopped thinking about it. I stopped thinking about punching the person. I started picturing myself hugging the person, just by that little thing, just by that little trick from negative thinking to more positive thinking. Instead of me trying to control it the wrong way, it's more controlling it the right way. Now, I know it's very hard to accept that you have these thoughts, because some thoughts are very uncomfortable. But ask yourself, hey, so far, has it helped me? The way I'm thinking, the way I'm trying to control my thoughts, it hasn't helped. So maybe I should try it this way. Doesn't mean that you accept thoughts. That means it's going to be that way. It doesn't mean that. You are basically not fighting it anymore. It doesn't mean that now, let's say, for example, with me, it doesn't mean now I'm going to go punch the person that was in front of me. No, it's just for me to wait to relax my anxiety. That's what it is. It's your anxiety that increases the intrusive thoughts. So what we want to do is decrease the anxiety by accepting the fact that we have these thoughts. So that way our anxiety can reduce and our thoughts can go away and we can get our focus onto something else. Now, changing the negative to more of a positive thought is not an easy thing. I know, I agree with you. It's not an easy thing to change it from a negative to a positive. But we can try it. We can try by writing down. Take a journal and write down the negative thoughts that you have. Take one negative thought at a time. You don't have to write the whole list. Take one negative thought at a time and say to yourself, okay, how can I change this thought to more of a positive thing? How can I do that? Now, it might take you time. It might take you time to think about something positive about that thought or how you can change it in a positive way. But eventually you will get there. It took me, I remember the first time I sat down to write something down that's positive about myself or positive things that I have done. It took me a good 30 to 45 minutes just to write one thing. And I was like, I have nothing. I was about to give up. I'm like, I have zero, because I never thought that. I never realized it. I never was paying attention to it. And no one's ever told me anything like that. So me now coming after all those years, telling myself, you know what? There's something good about me is not an easy thing. Or to try to think more positively is not an easy thing, because we're used to thinking in a certain way. We're used to thinking in a way that we're just, hey, I'm used to this. This is why I told you guys in the beginning of the episode that it's not going to be an easy thing to do, because we're not used to this. But it's going to help you at the end of the day. And that's something that we need to try. So to conclude, controlling our thoughts that we are having, the way to do it is not to control it, not to tell ourselves to stop thinking this way, not to tell ourselves to, not try to fight our thoughts or try to tell ourselves like, I shouldn't be thinking this way, or I don't want to have these thoughts anymore. What we need to do is accept that we're having these thoughts and change them more from a negative to more of a positive way. So that way we would feel much calmer and to get our focus off these thoughts once and for all. If you did like this episode, please click the like button and leave a 5-star review. The reason why I ask is because this way we're able to reach more people. And the more people that we can actually reach, the more people that we can actually help. Because my mission in this world, my purpose is to help people to overcome and heal their anxiety naturally and show them that it's possible to overcome. Thank you guys. Take care. And I'll see you guys in the next episode.